Welcome to the 3-Minute Thesis information. My name's Steve Seidel. I am a professor in psychology, but for the last 2 years, I've served as a graduate fellow within the College of Graduate Studies, and it was my pleasure to organize and put together the 3-Minute Thesis competition in cooperation with Dean Canales of the College of Graduate Studies. First of all, the 3-Minute Thesis is an academic research communication competition developed by the University of Queensland in Australia. Our university held its first 3MT competition during the 2015-2016 academic year, and we held separate competitions for doctoral and master's graduate students. Okay. This spring, in the past, right, we used to have just a master's level competition. We this year have changed it around because some doctoral students may have not been able to compete in the fall and won't be able to compete next fall. Okay, so the spring 2018 competition will be held for both doctoral and master's students, and every fall will just be a doctoral competition. If you are a doctoral student, you should consider participating in the spring competition really only if you're unable to participate in the fall 2018. Primary reason for that is the winner from the fall competition gets a chance to go to the regional competition, and you need to win that fall competition for that to happen. Okay, so when is this competition for the spring? Well, it's going to be Thursday, April 5th from 6 to 8 p.m. in the Heart Research Institute. But the thing that's most important, realize the deadline is coming up. So Friday, February 23rd is the deadline to register. I will give you a copy, hopefully, of this PowerPoint presentation if you need that link, but you can always go to the Grow page at the university and find it there as well. Okay, so here's the concept, right? The 3-Minute Thesis competition is a research competition developed by University of Queensland, like I said. It started in 2008. The premise of the competition is to develop academic presentation and research communication skills, and it supports the development of students' capacities to effectively explain their research in a language appropriate to an intelligent but non-specialist audience, right? Graduate students have 3 minutes to present compelling orations of the research topics and their significance. The 3MT is not an exercise in watering down the research, but forces students to consolidate their ideas and concisely explain their research discoveries. In addition to that, I think what I would like to add is that every graduate student that's engaged in any kind of research should be part of this competition. Probably one of the huge advantages of people that go through this competition are when you go out in the job market. And without a doubt, wherever you interview, they're going to ask you about either your thesis or your dissertation and what are you going to say, right? They don't want, a 20-minute description of what you have to say, but you need something that's quick, that grabs their attention, and really just impresses those individuals. So I always thought this is it, sometimes called an elevator speech, but this takes it to really kind of another level. Okay, so who's eligible? Well, of course, doctoral students currently enrolled at TAMUCC and actively engaged in dissertation research are eligible. Graduates of TAMUCC and previous winners, first, second, or People's Choice, or third place, of the 3MT competition are not eligible to participate. So the idea is, hey, if you have won an award already for this, we'd like to spread the wealth a bit and, give someone else a shot here. But a competitive candidate should have a well-conceived dissertation project, compelling data collected, and novel story to share. But one of the important parts, if you're doctoral students, you really should be presenting something with your dissertation. Right? Master's students must be actively engaged in research. Typically, that's probably going to be your thesis, but we actually allow people that are engaged as a kind of a PI in some of their project. Okay? And of course, just like doctoral, if you're a graduate of TAMUCC, Okay, we're not talking undergraduate, but if you're not enrolled and you're graduated, you're not eligible. And of course, if you previously won a competition, you're not eligible as well. And just like the doctoral students, right, the competitive candidate should have a well-conceived research project, compelling data collected, and a novel story to share. Okay. Winners. For both the competitions, the winners get a $500 gift card. The runner-up gets a $300 gift card. And the third place, or People's Choice, gets a $200 gift card. In addition to the $500 gift card in the fall, the doctoral students can compete, right? The winner will get this all expenses paid trip, right? Or at least travel expenses, right? To the regional competition that's held at the conference for Southern graduate schools in the spring semester. The nice thing about that conference is that you get a chance to do a lot of networking. There's schools all over that region, and that region is very large. And it's just flooded, of course, with deans, associate deans all over the place. I mean, they're really going to be great people to make contacts with. Okay, here's the rules, and the rules are set forth really by the 3MT organizers in Australia. Okay, so we all use the same rules, and this is it. You're allowed one PowerPoint slide, right? And it's a static slide, meaning you can't do any transitions, you can't do any animations in it, and it's up there from the time you begin to the time you end, and that's all you have, right? You can't use any additional electronic media, so no sound, no video files, anything like that. You can't use props, so no costumes, musical instruments, laboratory equipment. Can't do that. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes maximum, and of course, if you exceed that 3 minutes, you're disqualified. There's a timer we use for 3MT. If you do register, I will give you a copy of that actual timer we use for the competition so you can use it to practice with. Presentations are to be spoken word, so yeah, no singing, right? No poems, no rapping, okay? And the presentations are to commence from the stage, okay? Like a lot of teachers like to walk all over the classroom. No, you got to stay up there in that one place. Right next to really where your slide is. Presentations are considered to have commenced when the presenter starts their presentation through either movement or speech. So that's when the timer starts. And just remember, the decision of the adjudicating panel is final. One thing I'm always asked as far as rules, and I think it's for people that have waited a little too long to get started on things, is, well, can we have note cards? And absolutely not. That's considered a prop. You're up there with nothing but, right, your slide. That is it. Okay. What are you judged on? Well, there's two areas of judging. There's a comprehension of content, and we also look for engagement. So under comprehension of content, right, the judge is going to look for whether the presentation provided an understanding of the background to the research question being addressed and its significance. Did the presentation clearly describe the key results of the research, including conclusions and outcomes? And did the presentation follow a clear and logical sequence? Was the thesis topic, key results, and research significance and outcomes communicated in a language appropriate to a non-special audience? That one is especially key, right? Because if you're talking in a language that your audience, who is not in your field probably, cannot follow, right, you're going to lose them. And then the presentation really ends up being a disaster. Did the speaker avoid scientific jargon, explain terminology, and provide adequate background information to illustrate the points? Okay. And finally, did the presenter spend adequate time on each element of their presentation, or did they elaborate too long on one aspect, or was the presentation rushed? It's always terrible when you have to rush things, and it's really obvious when you are, because you start speaking super fast just to try to race the clock, right? You don't want to be in a position of that, and the only way around that is to practice, where you have your timing down, and and you got your pace down and so on. But yeah, practice makes perfect, and you wouldn't have to worry about a thing as long as there's enough practice sessions kind of thrown into your schedule. For engagement and communication, right? You're judged on whether or not you made this connection to the audience. So did the oration make the audience want to know more, right? You want to inspire your audience. Was the presenter careful not to trivialize or generalize the research, right? Did the presenter convey enthusiasm for the research? Your passion and enthusiasm is huge when it comes down to these competitions. Okay, so you want to bring that energy that you have. And if you are so excited about the research, your audience will be too. So engagement is much easier if you're expressing your enthusiasm for what you're doing. Did the presenter capture or maintain their audience's attention? Did the speaker have sufficient stage presence, eye contact, and vocal range, maintain a steady pace, and have a confident stance? With this, there's kind of two ways to look at this. I mean, you can look at it as a performance, in which case it kind of is, right? You're putting a production together, okay? But if you ask me, I would rather you, in terms of your style, kind of forget that it's a performance. And in the end, you want to come off as having a conversation with the audience rather than kind of acting out this play of what you're doing. That being said, there's so much from drama classes and so on that you can put in here that will help you maintain that audience attention. So your eye contact, your pace, your confidence, your voice inflection is huge, right? So practice. And of course, when you do it, either videotape, do it in front of an audience, get the feedback from them and use it to perfect, right, your presentation. Finally, did the PowerPoint slide enhance the presentation? Was it clear, legible, concise? The slides vary widely in terms of 3MT. Some people just have a single picture that represents kind of the theme of their presentation, which is wonderful. Other people that have maybe some more complex methodology might have a slide that really helps clarify what that methodology is. I have a few more tips that I have from a 3MT winner that we're going to look at later. But for now, say these are going to have to be tailor-made to your presentation, but it's very important to give that a lot of thought. Use it as you best need it. I think those tips later on will help you kind of clarify what you're looking for in the slide. All right. So yeah, I was trying to think how best to kind of help you with this. And, I have seen a lot of 3MT talks. I've been to regionals a couple of years and seen all those talks, and also, of course, our competitions here. And in the preparation of all these things, I've looked at, I would say, dozens at least of videos of winners on the internet, which I highly recommend you take a look at. They're real easy to Google. Get in there and Google 3MT winners, and you'll find tons of them. But looking at these talks, what I kind of dissected all these things, and when putting these things together, it really helps to have kind of a structure. And when you look at the winning ones, right, those winning presentations, you're going to find that they contain 6 components of those talks. So they're going to contain first the hook, which is a device used to introduce your topic of study in a way that grabs the audience attention. You got the problem, so the speaker will convey the problem to the audience in terms that they can understand and appreciate it's important. Remember, the problem is kind of a big picture thing. The research question, right? You're going to specifically actually state your research question. So your problem description should lead to an obvious statement of that research question, and it's really important that that's crystal clear. It's a very small part, right, time-wise, of your presentation, but it helps. Your approach would follow that. So how did you go about answering the research question? Okay, and perhaps if you have time, why did you choose that method? And then finally, what did you find, right, in discovery? What conclusions did you make? it's at this point you should be really excited, right? Because this is the kind of fun part of research, actually finding things. The big picture in the end, right? You're bringing it home free. So how will your research change the world, right? It seems a little ridiculous, but that's kind of where you want to end. It's how important this research is. And if you can show how the results of your research could end up changing the world, that would be awesome, right? Okay, so let's talk about each one of these components in a little more detail, right? First of all, I talked about this hook, and we're going to look at some videos in a second. I want you to really look for these parts and to really get an idea of the wide range of hooks, because they're all over the place. You need to look at those 3MT videos. So grab the audience attention right from the start, okay, by starting with something that almost everyone is interested in, okay, to hook them into that presentation, right? So you might start off, I don't know, let's say you were doing some kind of talk that dealt with stress or something like this, and you might just start off with saying, when we are put on camera, right, when a camera's pointed our direction, it makes us feel uncomfortable, right? You might just say something like this that hooks the audience, right? It's something they can definitely understand. It's something they have experienced. But then you lead from there into, right, a big statement of kind of the problem that you're going to talk about: overall anxiety, stress, whatever. But you want to start somewhere where they can relate to, okay? Best way to learn these things is take a look at those 3MT winning presentations, and you'll see a wide range of hooks that other people use. We're going to look at a few today. The idea is to build a bridge between the everyday experience of your audience and the more academic material you plan to present. So without a doubt, that hook should be related, right, to the problem that you're working with, okay? I have a link down here to the winning presentations if you need it. Of course, you can't get it from the video, but if you pull up the actual PowerPoint slides, it's there if you need it. Okay, the second section, right? After you hook that audience, you're ready to describe the problem you chose to tackle. Note that this is not your research question, right? That comes after this, but you want to paint the big picture version of that research question. That is, it's important to convey why that problem is important, right? Or why your research is important. To do that, you got to kind of paint this picture of a bigger problem that you're dealing with. More specifically, you want to point out why that problem should be important to the audience, right? So don't forget about them. Is there terminology you need to define for your research question? If so, this is where you want to do it, right? Because right after this is you're going to be introducing your research question. But once again, avoid jargon at all costs, right? You don't want to lose the audience due to the language that you use. Okay, now that they understand the problem, it's on to the research question, right? And for this, right, it's time to tell them where you or your research comes into the story that you're telling. And it's kind of interesting, if you watch some of the videos, that's exactly what some of the speakers will say, right? They will say, this is where I come in, okay? And that's what's telling you, okay, here's the research question, right? So what question are you trying to answer through your work? Be sure that you state that in a way that's understandable to the audience. Any terms that needed to be defined should already been defined, okay, when you were doing the problem. So this will likely be, right, a very short piece of the presentation. I mean, we're talking 10 seconds maybe of your presentation, but it's critical that you have it in there because it makes the transition between the problem and the approach that you're talking about. Okay, so a clearly stated research question makes your presentation much easier to follow for the audience. So it's critical. Okay, all right, got your research question done. The audience knows what your question is, so they're begging to hear, how did you try to answer this, right? What did you do and why'd you do it? So don't forget who you're talking to. Once again, keep the description of your approach and methods as simple as possible. If your methods were really complicated, that's where you may want to use the visual slide to help convey that information. So if you're finding that difficult to explain in a way that the audience can understand, you should have something on the slide. It will help you out, at least conveying that information and helping them understand. After hearing the approach, right, the audience should be able to foresee the possible outcomes of your investigation, right? So they should already be ahead of you, kind of guessing what you found, right? And clearly being able to do that, right? And then we come to discovery. And this is time, of course, to tell the audience what you found and the conclusions you made. You won't have time to tell them all the details, so stick to the major findings, which should include the most interesting ones. When you consider a result to be interesting, make sure, right, you explain why it's interesting and be excited about this section, right? In research, this probably was the most exciting part of your research, right? I doubt you were thrilled doing literature review. Okay, so when you get there, you designed your study and so on, you collect your data, and here's the moment of truth, right? Okay, so your passion should peak with discoveries. Now, for some of you that did not find anything, okay, or did not find what you wanted to find, so it was kind of, maybe you might think it was depressing, I think it was probably a frustrating experience. You should express that, okay, in there, because remember, frustration is passion too, okay, so that communicates just as well. You're now in the home stretch, so you want to bring your talk full circle by returning to the big picture problem you started with, right, which is really nice writing style called circular writing, okay, where you return. So if you asked a question at the beginning of the study, are you going to answer that question at the end? That would be a nice touch. So end with this grand statement of how your research or research agenda, okay, may or will or has changed the world, right? And that's kind of where you're in. So that's your big finish, right? So we're going to look at a few videos, and I want you to look for those things and how people did it. Okay, so before we look at the videos, I just want to talk about some of the most common mistakes made by students in preparing for 3MT. Number one, students fail to connect their research to the big picture, right? They're just really focused on research in its own context and in its context, and really never get beyond talking to people that understand their field, right? So that's a problem. So make sure that you're connecting things to the big picture. Two, students did not work hard enough to engage the audience curiosity about their work, right? Best way to do this is just be excited about what you're talking to. Bring that energy, right, with you when you're speaking. Because if you're excited about it, your audience will be excited. If you're having a good time doing this, they will have a good time listening to it. Okay? So they're pretty much a reflection of whatever you are experiencing and whatever you're projecting, right? So students, number three, students neglected the visual component of the presentation. So yeah, just don't throw anything up there. Give that some serious thought of how that slide, right, really represents your 3MT talk. Okay, so whether it's a picture that represents the entire theme of your presentation, or whether it really is a more specific thing that deals with helping you explain the methodology or something, that's fine. Okay, you kind of have to do it according to your presentation, but show it to others and ask them that question. Does that slide help you understand, or did it add anything to the presentation, right? And of course you want it too. Number four, a student did not leave enough room for practice in the presentation. I probably should have put that number one, okay, but yeah, these things take time, but I don't want to say a lot of time. For the most part, you can sit down in one night and probably write down an initial script for your 3MT presentation. And once you have that initial script, which I would say do before March gets here, okay? And then you have all March to start practicing these things, and I would almost practice these things daily. practice them in the car when you're driving. They're only 3 minutes. You can do this. Whether you want to think of it as just memorizing things, it will, but eventually it'll have kind of a feel to it. And one of the things that you want to kind of eliminate, because if you haven't practiced it enough, you're going to have this internal dialogue in your head, right, that really overthinks things, and it'll screw you up in terms of your timing. It will also kind of create stress for you when you're really fighting to kind of remember what you were going to say when you have really these two conversations going on in your head. But the only way around that is through practice. So with practice, that internal dialogue will disappear and you know what you're doing, right? And as you'll see, this winner speech that I have, or this winner's talk about tips, you then can just let it go or let it fly and have fun with it. All right, so practice, practice, practice. Can't say it enough. But if you've been practicing through March for the presentation in April, you will be just fine, especially if you've done it nearly daily. Okay. The student failed to demonstrate their enthusiasm for the topic, right? You have to have it, right? Because if you're enthusiastic, your audience will be enthusiastic. It is really the key to maintaining the attention of the audience. Okay, so be excited. All right, so let's look at a few of these winning presentations. And for each of these presentations, I want you to try to identify the 6 parts of the presentation. This first presentation is by Karthik Sukumar. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but from Purdue University. And what I found interesting about this presentation is I don't think it had a lot of content to it, okay? But his presentation and the way he goes through the 6 sections of this is so crystal clear. And I think it's that organization of that talk that really assisted him with winning the competition at his school. Okay, so let's take a look at that one.
He spent 25 years of his life before coming to Purdue for his master's and later his PhD. He is the ex-captain and president of the Purdue University Cricket Club. He recently got married, and his wife, who graduated from Purdue, also participated in the 3MT finals. So it runs in the family here. He is extremely passionate about sports, and his first love will always be sports, much to his wife's chagrin. One day he hopes to open his own sports performance and analytics company. The title of his talk is Inside the Mind of an Expert.
Hey, how many times have you seen a Peyton Manning make that inch-perfect pass and thought to yourself, wow, how did he do that? Or listen to Adele or Beyonce hit that perfect note that completely mesmerizes you. I've always wondered what makes certain people excel in their field and set them apart from others. As I was beginning to explore, to identify differences between experts and novices in different fields, aircraft pilot performance seemed the perfect fit. Did you know 80% of air crashes are caused due to pilot error? In 2009, an air crash led the Federal Aviation Administration to change a regulation on pilot recruitment. Instead of 250 hours, pilots now require 1,500 hours to pilot a commercial US carrier. This change in regulation clearly shows the importance of experience, flying hours, and most importantly, expertise in piloting an aircraft. This brings me to my primary research question. Are there significant differences between expert and novice pilots based on their brain activity? Now, I use an electroencephalographic or an EEG device to measure brain activity in expert and novice pilots. The recorded brain activity helps me understand the specific parts of the brain and the dominant cognitive processes while they are flying. Surprisingly, what I found was the expert pilots show significantly lesser brain activity than novice pilots, which is a direct result of more efficient brain usage. I believe these cognitive processes that are specific to expert pilots are integral to achieving expertise. Keeping focus on the specific parts of the brain, we can now develop better training tools and tests for novice pilots. This change will help in accelerating their progress from a novice to becoming an expert. Moreover, I also believe that this idea is not specific to pilots alone. We can use this research and extrapolate it to understand expert performance in so many other fields. So next time you see a Manning or a Beyonce perform, think of me. I might just know the secret.
Okay, so from that presentation, I hope you're able to look at that and kind of identify those 6 parts, right? He starts off with that hook talking about Peyton Manning and a Beyonce example, right? Things that he's at least hoping that the audience is familiar with. He takes it from there, right, and talking about experts into his problem area, which is going to be dealing with airline pilots, right? And then he introduces the research question. He goes through his approach, right? Talks about what he found, and then starts generalizing, right? And taking what can I do with those results to kind of show their importance and bringing things back, right, into kind of a big picture of, you know, why his results are going to change the world. And in the end, right, he's just very optimistic and very kind of passionate about what he's saying. And that pretty much was, I couldn't think of a more picture perfect one that goes through those 6 components of a research presentation. Okay, for the second one, okay, this is Megan Posey from Australia. Now, keep in mind, Australia kind of started this earlier, and they have, well, really some of the best presentations that are out there, and then 2 of these are actually from them. So in the second example, what I want you to note is how the speaker grabs the audience's attention by acting out the various characters, okay? Out various characters in her talk. So she's got some drama training for sure. When she does that, of course, she has such a wide range of vocal inflection that when you hear those imitations, they just grab your attention and bring you back in to what she's talking about. At the same time, even though it may be a little different approach, you can kind of identify those components as you go through this talk. So let's take a look at this one.
Parents and teachers have become increasingly concerned about girls following the 2006 advent of Facebook. It's been blamed for a rise in bullying and a decline in social skills. My research, however, takes a slightly different approach and looks at 3 things: grade 8 girls, identity, and Facebook's most commonly used feature, status updates. It's based on a simple and age-old premise. If all the world's a stage, then surely Facebook is just another stage on which actors can perform. And what do all actors want? Desirable reactions from their audiences. This involves trying a number of different strategies on for size. Should I present myself as kind, needy, self-sacrificial, talented, intimidating? So, dramaturgical metaphor in hand, I set about answering 2 questions. First, which of these strategies are grade 8 girls using in their status updates? And second, how and why are grade 8 girls using their status updates more broadly? I used a mixed methods approach, and 349 surveys, 9 interviews, and 445 status updates later, I had some answers. I collected updates ranging from long weekend, yay, to piss off, to how do people just have sex with complete strangers? I can't even order pizza over the phone. And I coded these status updates according to the strategies these girls were using to present themselves. While you would expect that bullying and attention seeking would rate highly, they didn't. Girls most commonly presented themselves as likeable by using flattery and compliments. And this is exactly what happens in offline settings. You see, girls need to maintain synergy between their online and offline identities. Why? because everything you say on Facebook can be used against you in the court of social approval. When I asked the girls why they updated their own statuses, they said, just to let other people know what I'm doing if I'm bored. But when I asked them why other people updated their statuses, they said, she'll just do anything to get attention. She just wants the boys to like her. This might explain why more than 30% of the girls in my study reported updating their statuses at least once per day. Because status updates will be interpreted differently by every audience member, identities are in a constant state of flux. Identity becomes less a question of who am I, and more a question of what do you see in me, what do you want in me. My research challenges the fearful notion of an authentic offline identity and an inauthentic online identity. It shows that, like the classroom, Facebook is just another space for girls to experiment with their identities and gauge the reactions of others. So, if there's one message we should be sending to grade 8 girls on Facebook, know your audience. Thank you.
Okay, in that example, you saw a couple things. One, of course, like I said, how she was using kind of dramatical, or whatever you call that, dramatical skills, drama skills. And the way she uses her hands throughout to express, which is really important. You don't want your hands doing really crazy things while you're talking. So be kind of aware of your body movements as well. Hey, but she really kind of spends a lot of time on her results, right? That shows she spends a time on discovery, and she really is very, I think, painstakingly taking times to make sure you know why those results are important, okay? But as you look through it, it contains all of these components that we've talked about. Okay, so I've saved the best for last, okay? At least this is one of my favorites, if not my favorite 3MT presentation that I've seen. So in this third example, pay attention, of course, her very clever use of her visual slide, which actually is just a blank white screen, but she's very clever with it. And more so, though, look at how she's engaged in just this very comfortable conversational style with the audience rather than acting out a performance, right? So this is one, it's like if someone gave this presentation, no one would want to follow this one, I don't believe. But she is just evidence that, boy, you practice enough and this is what happens as a result, as comfortable as she is. So here she is.
Stage, Rosanna Stevens, from the ANU College of Arts and Social Sciences. And the title of Rosanna's talk tonight is Now You See It.
It might seem as though I've started speaking with a blank PowerPoint slide behind me, but there are actually a bunch of things on this slide. You just can't see them yet. To your right is a Ferrari I drew myself in white. To your left is a soy latte in a white takeaway cup. And in the middle is a home, I drew myself in white, a home among the gum trees. Lots of plum trees, clothesline out back, veranda out front, and an old rocking chair. It's interesting how you can't see things when the context they're surrounded by makes them seem invisible. Suddenly this slide full of nothing is full of white stuff. You just needed help to see it. Here's something else you can't see. This slide is actually a black slide with a white rectangle pasted over the top of it. Over 200 years ago, white people arrived and settled over the top of already established Aboriginal life. And colonisation happens today. The settled way we are encouraged to live, the ways we are encouraged to learn and consume, how often we are encouraged to wash, and the ways we think about and use nature are actually pretty white. People who fit into this society are taught to think of it as normal and awesome, but if you don't fit in, whiteness is very visible because it can be depressingly inescapable. Aboriginal and black academics and activists are suggesting that one of the first steps toward creating a more equal and considerate society is for white people today to identify and understand the dominance of our culture. From there, we can challenge how, in modern Australia, one way of life smothers another. But it's difficult to challenge something if you've been taught not to see it. Is a job white? Is a house white? Is organic gluten-free food white? If I fall into the vortex of cat videos on YouTube and I'm wearing my pajamas, am I just procrastinating or am I white procrastinating? My research is about understanding what whiteness looks like and how it works. I'm collecting and analysing Aboriginal accounts of feeling unwelcome, ignored, and misunderstood in society. And from that material, I'm piecing together a picture of white Australia that we can begin to debate. My thesis is a novel. The plot is a secret, but this conversation needs to be communicated well beyond the walls of a university. My hope is that research in this field will point toward a more equal, considerate, and respectful Australia that is so much more than just white.
Okay, so from that video, like I said, the thing I like about it so much is just her interaction with the audience and how she has a conversational style, but the audience is probably such at ease and really just enjoying listening to what she has to say. And that's kind of right where you want to be. Rosanna Stevens also offers some really nice tips, and I wanted to include them in this video. Okay, so I want you to listen to her, and she's going to talk about 3 tips that she sees are really important for people that are preparing for this contest. So let's listen to what she has to say.
Hi, my name is Rosanna Stevens. I'm the winner of the ANU 3-minute thesis competition and runner-up and People's Choice in the Trans-Tasman 3-minute thesis competition for 2014. And I'm a student here at ANU in the School of Archaeology and Anthropology, and I'm within the interdisciplinary and cross-cultural research program here at ANU. I'm here to give you my 3 top tips for getting the most out of your 3-minute thesis experience. So, my first tip, think about your slide. When I spoke, I had a blank slide, and it wasn't for no reason. When you get up there and you're speaking, you want to make sure that 3 minutes that you have are as exciting and informative as possible. And one of the best ways that you can do that is by making sure that you really think about what's on the slide behind you. Don't just have a pretty picture because. Make sure that what you have behind you is helping explain what you're doing in a way that maybe your words can't. So, for example, with my blank slide, I really wanted to communicate that the audience couldn't necessarily see something that I wanted them to. And through that concept, I was able to communicate a lot more about my research. Great things to include on a slide might be diagrams, funny pictures that do relate to what you're doing. An illustration of what you're talking about can really, really help the audience go that extra step in understanding what you're talking about in a really useful way that helps convince them that what you're doing is really interesting. Tip 2, change or save the world. That might sound like a really big thing to do, but the 3-minute thesis is a really great time to check in with yourself about why you're doing your research and how it's important to you, but also how it might be important to the broader community. Remember that you're doing the 3-minute thesis because you're communicating your research to a lay audience. And a lay audience want to understand why you're passionate about what you're talking about. So sit down and think about how your research isn't necessarily changing everybody's lives, but is changing the world in a way. So, for example, with my research, I'm writing a novel. Sure, that's my thesis. But on top of that, I'm actually wanting to interrogate the way that society functions to create a better sense of equality culturally and racially in Australia. And when you talk about your research in those terms, the audience can suddenly relate to what you're talking about in a new way that helps them shed light on why what you're doing is so weighted and vital and why you're passionate about it in the first place. Tip 3. In the words of a famous Disney princess, let it go. Letting it go might sound like a really difficult thing to do, but when you get up on that stage and you've done all of that preparation leading up to you speaking, you want to be able to get up there and make sure that there isn't an extra dialogue going on in your head, and it's really hard to stop that voice. People do the 3-minute thesis for all kinds of reasons. They do it because they're competitive. They do it because they like speaking. They do it because they want to challenge themselves to become better at communicating their research. Or in the case of me, I really wanted to make sure that my research was answerable to a broader audience and that they felt like they could talk about it to me. So when you get up there, no matter which reason you're engaging with to get up on that stage, you need to make sure that in that moment you rely on all of the practice that you've done and you just let it go. Enjoy the experience, and that's really hard to do, but a great way of practicing that is to use a space. Imagine that you are getting up in front of an audience. Imagine that there are lights on you. Close your eyes for a minute and then pretend that you really are starting it for the first time and there is no going back. You'll find that you will actually make a lot of mistakes that you didn't think that you were going to make in the first place, but also this surprising experience is going to mean that when it comes to getting up on that stage, you really can just let it go.
So much more than just white.
Okay, so those are her 3 points for 3MT, and I tell you, every time I see that, I just, really am in awe of how comfortable she is in front of the camera, right? And like I said, in terms of your talks, you want to get to that point where you're so well rehearsed that you can't wait to get up on stage and it becomes something that you totally enjoy. And I agree with her 100% that if you are enjoying yourself up there, your audience will too. And that goes so much, takes extra miles, whatever. It goes so far into helping you win a competition like this. So, to kind of sum up here, okay, good presentations, of course, are going to engage that audience, right? As long as we have enough contestants, right, we'll have this third place award that we'll do by people's choice, right, where the audience will vote. So they're going to be very connected. If we end up with a small number of contestants, we probably won't use that people's choice, but we'll just go with the third place prize instead. But it is important, right? You want to engage that audience. Explicitly connect that research to the real world. We've kind of made that point. Okay, as far as your speaking, work on that. You want to speak clearly, comprehensively. Remember that the audience does not speak your discipline's language, right? So no academic language, no jargon. Choose your words wisely, right? Use active verbs, okay? Shorter words, sentences, make it easy for them to follow and understand. Pace yourself and find your own rhythm, right? You don't want to appear rushed at all. So the only way you know that is going through the talk quite a few times, right? Dozens, okay? If not 30, 40 times, even more. But consciously, try to slow your talking speed. I think when you get in front of people, that's the tendency to do it, is you kind of speed everything up. And if I haven't said enough, practice your material and delivery often, right? Familiarity with your script will help the presentation flow more naturally and easily, and you will wipe out, right, that internal dialogue that you have going on in your head that'll really just screw you up when it comes down to your presentations. So if you need to look at more videos, right, the website's 3minutethesis.org, and you can go to the 3MT Showcase, or I think they have another link in there that actually talks about watch these videos, but it's very easy to find. Also, I would recommend, if you want to see more U.S. competitions and winners from there, use YouTube or Google those 3MT winner videos. And you're bound to find things from all over the country of people in those videos, because there are way more than 200 schools now that are competing in this 3-minute thing. And there's talk of a U.S. competition as well. So down the road, it'll be interesting, but it'll really be neat if we get to kind of send representatives from, our schools off to regionals, which we have that for the graduate 3MTs. And it'd be nice if the regionals go on to US. Well, that's in the works. Okay, so don't know when it's going to happen. Okay, but they're talking about it. Okay, so if I haven't said it enough, right? Do not procrastinate. Start preparing today. If you're going to do this competition, try to write a script before March gets here. Once you got that initial script, practice becomes much easier. Can't really practice without it. Okay, so, make that your goal, all right? So if you sign up on the 23rd, by the 23rd, to do this, and believe me, I will be haunting you as well, okay, to try to push you to get these things done. Start preparing today. Okay, so if you need any assistance, I am absolutely honest about this. I am so happy to help students prepare for 3MT. Do not hesitate to contact me or grow. I'm over in psychology, and with me over there is Dr. Juliana Zeichman. She actually is a winner of 3MT at, I'm going to say New Mexico State or University of New Mexico. Can't remember what university she's from. Okay, but yeah, she's won twice, I think, at her school for a master's level and I think doctoral level. But here's my email. Feel free to contact me. Just give me a call if you'd like. Plenty of extra resources. Talked about the website for 3MT. We have some things up on the Grow website as well to take you through 3MT. If you have any other questions, though, please contact Grow as well, and they will be helpful. Let us know if you need a practice audience. I think we can probably do something for you if we need to do that. So here's Grow's number on this slide as well. Or you can just stop by, room 220 on the second floor. If you haven't been up there, you're missing out on a great place to hang out for one or get some assistance. So finally, at least on this PowerPoint slide, I have a link here to the actual registration for the competition, but it's up on the web page as well under Grow. And if you need anything, do not hesitate to contact us.